Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Republicans' best case scenario in the 2024 Senate race. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press the like button, share this video if you're interested. Don't forget, we do have memberships. We can find links to that in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. I'm going to be filling out the 2024 Senate elections in a Republican's best case scenario. How many seats can they possibly get at the very most in a Democrat's basically worst case scenario? So let's start off with the likely seats for the Republicans. I think Texas will be likely for Ted Cruz. He'd win this seat by a little over 5 percentage points in his best case scenario, defeating Colin Allred. Now, it was pretty close in 2018. Ted Cruz almost lost to Beto O'Rourke, who you can argue is a little better candidate than someone like Colin Allred with, I would say, low or little name recognition. But still, Texas is a border state, and I think because this is a general election instead of a midterm, I think that really boosts Ted Cruz's chances. But if this was held in a midterm year, I think Colin Allred would have a decent shot. But especially in Ted Cruz's best case scenario, it would be likely for him not too close at all whatsoever. And then Nebraska's Senate race will be likely for Deb Fischer. Now, she is going up against an independent candidate, and the independent candidate this time is going to be Dan Osborne, who is backed by the Democratic Party. Now, what the Democrats did is instead of running someone from, obviously, as a Democrat, they chose someone to run as an independent to make this race more competitive, because they knew if they ran a Democrat against Deb Fischer, then the race won't be close at all. And now, what Republicans have to do is spend more money and dump more money into the race, because Dan Osborne, in terms of polling, is actually pretty close at almost winning this state, even though he's not quite yet. But Nebraska is still pretty much a red state, and just like I mentioned for Ted Cruz in Texas, this is not a midterm election, this is a general election, which is going to favor Donald Trump, which means it would favor Republicans on some of these down ballot races, for example, the Senate. Therefore, Deb Fischer is going to win by a likely margin, not too close, just like Ted Cruz's Senate seat. And then I also think Montana would be likely for Tim Sheehy. You take a look at the majority of the polling on RCP, and not only that, 538 as well, consistently showing, these are not outliers, but it's constant, that Tim Sheehy is actually winning by sizable amounts of 5 to 6, at some point even 7 or 8 percentage points, defeating the incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester. Montana, as we all know, should be a Trump plus almost 20 states. It's a very red state, and considering that this is a general election, not a midterm, it's going to heavily favor Republicans. In this map as a whole, the Senate map for 2024 is meant to favor, it's literally built to favor the Republicans. That's why they can afford to lose seats in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and even Arizona, and potentially Ohio. They can still afford to lose it, but somehow still hang on to the Senate with at least like 50 to 51 seats, because the map is literally built and made for the Republicans to flip control of the Senate. And then you have the likely states for the Democrats. I think obviously New Mexico, Martin Heinrich is not really facing a competitor at all, and this is a pretty much blue state overall. Therefore, it's not going to be likely no matter the scenario. But I do think that there won't be. I think that's the only likely states for the Democrats in a Republican best case scenario. So now we're going to skip towards the lean states in a Republican's best case scenario in the 2024 Senate race. I think right off the bat, there won't be any lean states for the GOP. So I think there will be lean states for the Democrats. Virginia, for Tim Kaine, obviously he was Hillary Clinton's VP selection in 2016. Ultimately, as we all know, lost that race. And he's going up against Hung Cao on the Republican side, who's a Trump-backed candidate. Trump endorsed him. So, I mean, I don't think Hung Cao is going to win, obviously. It might not even be close. But in a best-case scenario, because of how things are looking like with the early vote, and in terms of polling in terms of the general election, Virginia is expected to be a very close race between Trump and Harris. Therefore, maybe Trump can really narrow down this race and help out Hung Cao, and let's just say a Republican's best case scenario, to maybe a lean margin of within 5 percentage points for Tim Kaine. Maybe it could be close. Maybe Maryland can be close as well, because obviously Larry Hogan on the Republican side is, I believe, the incumbent governor here, and he's very popular in a very deep blue state, and he's a Republican as governor. That's very shocking. And I mean, he has a lot of name recognition in the state. Angela Alsbrooks, keep in mind, is not an incumbent Democrat. She's not running for re-election, obviously. She's not even the incumbent. So maybe the race could be somewhat potentially close, but the majority of polls are saying Alsbrooks would destroy Larry Hogan by probably a comfortable margin. But still, because Larry Hogan obviously has that name recognition, he's not going up against an incumbent, and he is literally served as the governor here, I believe. I think all those factors point to any Republican's best case scenario. Maybe Maryland could be lean instead of safe, or maybe even likely for the Democrats. And then I forgot, there is one more lean state for the Republicans in their best case, and that's going to be the state of Ohio. I do believe Bernie Moreno will defeat the incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who is from a very red state, just like Jon Tester from Montana. Those two candidates on the Democratic side are facing very similar races, obviously. Both are Democratic senators from very red states, but I do think Jon Tester has a worse chance than someone like Sherrod Brown. And I do think Bernie Moreno will win in his best case by probably around 5 percentage points. Not quite enough to be considered likely, but still, it's going to be a victory no matter what. I just think Sherrod Brown is too strong of a candidate to lose by a likely margin, even in a best case year for the Republicans. So, moving on to the tilt states for the Republicans in their best case scenario. I think they will flip Pennsylvania. I do think David McCormick will defeat the incumbent senator for the Democrats, who is basically called an electoral juggernaut. He always wins re-election. Bob Casey, who is extremely popular. He has a lot of name recognition. And David McCormick is someone who ran in the 2022 midterms but lost to the primary against Dr. Oz, who then originally lost to, as we all know, John Fetterman. This time around, because this is a general election year instead of a midterm, therefore it boosts David McCormick's chances of actually winning. And a recent poll actually had David McCormick up by a little over 1 percentage point. And I think in the Republicans' best case scenario for the Senate races, I do think McCormick could possibly defeat Bob Casey. And a numerous number of polls are showing Pennsylvania's Senate race is really tightening up. And I also think the Republicans will flip Michigan's Senate race. Obviously, the candidate for the Republican is going to be Mike Rogers, who's going up against a pretty weak candidate on the Democratic side, Alyssa Slotkin, who, keep in mind, is not an incumbent, which really boosts Mike Rogers' chances. And this is a general election year in which Trump is favored, so yes, he can carry some down-ballot races for the candidates on the Republican side. And Mike Rogers also is not the strongest candidate, but because he's facing a pretty weak candidate and Alyssa Slotkin, I do think maybe he can get that seat in a Republican's best case dream scenario. I would not call that realistic, though. And a recent poll actually shows it tied. Therefore, I think maybe he could possibly win this. And now the tilt states for the Democrats and a Republican's best case scenario for the Senate races. I think Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin, those three Senate seats, will be tilt for the Democrats in a Republican's best case scenario. I just can't see how Tammy Baldwin loses this race. I mean, she always wins. I believe the last time she won, it was by like close to double digits. If not, it was like 10 points. And like, she really doesn't, she like never makes, it's never really close. And I know Eric Hovde is fundraising a lot of money. He's dumping a lot of money into the state. In terms of the fundraising numbers, it's actually looking pretty good for Eric Hovde in Wisconsin, I believe. I think he, at some point, he actually did out fundraise Tammy Baldwin in this state. But majority of polling shows that Tammy Baldwin will have a very decisive victory, and not a single poll I can find has Eric Hovde up. Therefore, even in Republicans' best case scenario, I just can't see Tammy Baldwin losing. So she'll win by like under percentage point by a tilt margin, and even in a Republicans' best case scenario for the Senate. And in Nevada, not a single poll that I can find has Samuel Brown, the Republican, up. Therefore, similar to Wisconsin, if like not a single poll has the Republican up, even in their best case, I just can't see how they win. Like on average, Jackie Rosen is up by over 5 percentage points. Like likely margins, do I think that's going to happen? No, but still, it's going to be closer. But I just can't see Samuel Brown winning even in his best case scenario. Jackie Rosen is a electoral juggernaut, just like Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin and Bob Casey from Pennsylvania. Also, Nevada is known to literally like Democratic senators. Meanwhile, on the governorship, they tend to favor Republicans. So because Nevada loves Democratic senators, I do think Jackie Rosen would still win. And then you have Arizona. The Republicans are running one of the worst candidates ever, Kari Lake, who is more than likely going to lose by potentially around the same, probably even more than Mark Kelly's margin of victory in 2022 by maybe even more than 4 to 5 percentage points, potentially even likely. As if right now, I do have Ruben Gallego winning no matter the scenario. If it's a Republican's best case, it does not matter. Kari Lake will still wind up losing. And if it's basically a regular prediction, I would actually have Ruben Gallego winning by close to 5 percentage points because Kari Lake is just that bad. But obviously Trump on the general election level is still expected to win this state by a couple points if you look at 538. And Ruben Gallego is not an incumbent, so which helps Kari Lake, but still, she's just an utter disaster. When she ran for the governor's office in 2022, she still lost to someone who literally did not campaign at all. Katie Hobbs is not the best candidate. I mean, I understand she still served in that state in a high office, but still, considering that she did not campaign at all, and to run for governorship in Arizona is easier to win if you're a Republican than running for the Senate. And the Senate is much harder for Kari Lake, so she's definitely not going to win. So in a Republican's best case scenario for the Senate elections in 2024, I see them getting 54 seats at the very most. That's the max. To the Democrats, 46 seats at the very least for them in their worst case scenario. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on the map. What states you agree with or disagree with and why. One last final reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss on my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we do have memberships, so you can find links to that in the description section if you were interested. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.